Hi, do you know how great you are? I mean, do you know what kind of potential lies within you that you have not yet utilized, that you don't even know exists? Well, I'm here to tell you that we all have a great deal of potential and capability within us, but most of us are never going to know this because we just can't leave our comfort zone. Hi, my name is Kevin, and I'm here to share with you this great news and just to encourage you to move out of this comfort zone. I would like to tell you a story about someone who started this journey and he didn't know where I would take it, but he just trusted the process. And after a very long time, things eventually began to look up. In the 1975, there was a young man who was in college. He was studying, I think, liberal arts. I'm not so sure what he was studying then. But then at some point, he felt this thing was not interesting and he decided to quit. And his parents were like, why are you doing this? That's saved, like in the US, people save for college. And they were willing to see him through college and just support him for whatever course he could do. And actually, this was one of the contract the parents, because these were adoptive parents. This is one of the things that talked about with his biological mother. They had agreed that they would actually support the boy to the highest level of education he could do. So they were surprised, everyone was surprised. I'm sure his friends, everyone was surprised when he decided eventually that he didn't want to study anymore. So he quit college, and while he was still in college, he was just walking around campus, and then one day he saw very beautiful posters, this kind of posters used for advertisement. And then he was intrigued by it, and then he decided to hop in, into that class where people study the skills to enable them to make such posters. It was called calligraphy. And he went into calligraphy and he enjoyed it, and after finishing the class, he left. All right, after studying that unit, he left. And it was asked, why have you dropped, right? Why have you dropped? Then he said, I just don't know. I don't feel like doing that because it does not make sense to me. And I don't want to waste my parents' tuition money on something that I really don't understand, something that I don't find meaningful to myself. And he said, I was asked, now, what do you want to do? And it was like, I don't know, but I'll just figure it out. So for the next few months and years, he drops out of this college. He takes a journey. He goes to India, and deep down his heart, he said he was looking for something called inspiration. He was looking for a meaning to his life, something meaningful, and he just couldn't find it in school, and that's why he quit. So after some time, he teams up with some friends. He was so much into electronics. He loved technology, he loved electronics, and at some point in school, he had built some equipment and actually, competed in some projects equivalent of what we have in Kenya, called Science Congress. All right. So after some time, he starts something. All right, with his friend, and they start building, gadgets, computers, small, and he teamed up with a friend, and they started this company. Several years later, in the process of building, his friend was very good in design, and he actually is the one who built that machine. But then this guy was particularly interested in the interface, how the machine worked, how people could interact with the machine. And then, fortunately, he used the knowledge he had gathered in calligraphy to make the design very appealing and user friendly. Something that later on became a very innovative idea, and other companies that were in the same industry actually copied. And before we knew it, our friend became a millionaire, and he went on to start a very big company. I don't know if any one of you would like to guess who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bill Gates. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs. Mm-hmm. And you? Uh-huh. I'm going to give this friend of mine a candy. Do you eat candies? That was very nice. We are talking about someone by the name Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs dropped out of school because he didn't feel what he was studying was what he really wanted to do. he was not passionate about it. He was just, he wanted something, he was so energetic about something he was passionate about. And he found it. He looked for it and he found it at a very young age. And he pushed his boundaries, and they went on to start a company by his friend, with his friend by the name Steve Wozniak. And they started Apple, they built, and this was in 1997. And by 1984, they had built something called Macintosh, and they had become millionaires. And company was doing so well, they raised a lot of money. Then in 1985, which is very unfortunate, Steve is kicked out of the organization that he had built. And since he was the founder and the CEO, Steve actually helped to bring someone on board called Scully. Scully was the CEO, and at that time, Scully was a CEO at a company called Pepsi. Otherwise, Steve is the one who brought him on board. But again, it is this Scully who went ahead and fired. And he told these people that we need to fire this guy. So when Steve was fired, he was so devastated, he was so humiliated, he was so sad, he felt so sorry for himself. Because can you imagine, friends, you helped to build something. And by the way, this is very funny. I remember at one time I was working in an organization that my boss had started. It was an NGO. And one day he called me, and it was a very good scientist, and he had worked with a very great scientist called, I don't know how many of you have heard of someone called Tom Joseph Udiambo. This is a person who started an organization called ISIPE. This guy was also kicked out of ISIPE. So this CEO of mine calls me. He was also a professor, and tells me, how 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 is it possible that someone can start an organization and is kicked out? So there's something that people need to understand about structures of organization. There's a way in which, if you want your organization to grow, you can start it and then you leave it to the public to manage it. Basically, because you're looking for talents and you're also looking for funds. So sometimes when you're looking for funds, the people who are going to give you funds could say some of the things they could say. We want capable people to, headhunt for people who can do these jobs, financial manager. So at some point, you just become part of the organization, but you're not everything about the organization. So this happened to Steve Jobs, and he was kicked out, and it was so humiliating. And he went home. Can you imagine what you started, and now you're going home without anything? So the story is so sad. I mean, the story is just sad. Steve goes back home, and he says that was the hardest part of his life. But do you know what kept him going? He had passion for what he did. And he had passion for building stuff, he had passion for technology. And Steve says that that was one of the most, I mean, the most definitive moments of his life. The period from when he was fired to the period when he was reinstated. He was reinstated after 10 years in 1995. And between that time, he had built a company called Pixar, which went on to become a very great company. And now later on, when Steve was asked about, how he managed it, he said the only thing that kept him going was the passion and dedication he had for what he loved. And that is what made him to persevere, all right? To persevere. Had he not persevered, if he was like most of us, maybe you will have gotten into, drugs, you will have become dejected, and, just resorted to doing things which do not add up. But he held on to this because this is what he really loved. This is what he really loved. And he goes on to create very beautiful products. And when Steve is reinstated back at Apple, he was already fired up. And that's why he goes ahead to create very innovative products. And the company goes ahead to become one of the most profitable and richest companies, making billions in revenues, billions of dollars. Why is this story important, and why did I talk about it? This story is important because of something called perseverance. Perseverance. Perseverance comes from passion and loving what to do. Now, if you do not have passion, it is going to be very difficult for you to persevere on a task. Now, the first thing you have to do on a task is that you have to love the job you're doing. And for you to love the job, you have to make the job meaningful. You have to make the job meaningful. You have to make whatever you're doing have some impact on you and on the people. That way is going to give you a greater sense of responsibility to the people. This is what happened to Steve. So, friends, I'm here to tell you today that each one of us can really, we may not build Macs, we may not build iPads, but I'm here to tell you that all of us, we have something big and great inside of us that if we harness it, we can actually become great. Maybe not in the level of Steve, but we can also push those boundaries, we can push the limits, and we can become better. How can you do this? Now, um, I have several things which I usually tell people to do. The first thing, I believe that for us to do this, we have to find something that we love doing. And if you have not found it yet, we need to keep looking. We need to keep looking. It comes at different times to different people. But this is where the perseverance comes in. We must persevere and we must not give up. We must keep on looking. I'll give you an example. You know, Steve says that he's very lucky he learned about what he loved at a very early age. There's certain people who found what they love at a very, very late stage. How many of you love chicken? I do. I love chicken. How many of you eat KFC chicken? Hmm. Do you know the story of KFC? Do you know how it came about? Well, I would like to tell you that the founder of KFC is Kentucky Fried Chicken. The founder of KFC was someone by the name, he was a soldier actually who had really struggled for a very long time in his life. And he started KFC at 60 years old. He had not given up. He had started several restaurants that had been blazed down by fire at some places that had been closed, business was not doing well, but he kept on going, kept on going. Can you imagine at 30, 40, things are still not working out? He was called someone by the name Sullivan. And then he goes ahead and makes it at 60. That is the story of KFC. So I'm here to tell you today that time is still on your side. Provided you're still on the face of this earth, there's a reason as to why you exist. Thank you.